浮生无恋。
浮生无恋. Welcome back to the Needin podcast. I am Auge Eidos. With me, as always, is my wife and Shuanxiu partner.
Hello, this is Zhiyuan.
This is episode 2. If you have not yet listened to episode 1, the river and two dams image is what we are working from, and you can pick that up afterward. Tonight does not require it. Tonight we are doing 5 things. We open with a short Dao De Jing contemplation, chapter 11, in our Shifu's reading on the relationship between Yo and Wu, presence and absence, and on how that relationship runs everything we will touch tonight. Then I will read 3 things Marc Andreessen has placed in the public square in recent weeks. Because the show responds when the Dominion frame is speaking, and this period has seen the Dominion frame speaking very loudly through one of its most visible voices. After the Andreessen reading, my lovely wife, Zhiyuan, takes us to the counterbalance. Our great teacher Gofan Senshin's own story, the one she has told publicly, the thyroid nodule, the elevator, the Pigu fast, the founding of the academy. And then a longer passage from her recent CCTV interview, the public teaching she gave on national Chinese television about traditional culture, about emptiness, and about how to bring a different C into the household. From there, I take the structural contrast directly. The dominion frame and the lineage are 2 configurations, and the difference between them is the difference Shifu names at the open. One configuration fills every space it touches, the other configuration tends the emptiness that allows function. We close with a single page from Gaofen Senshin's own meditation manual, Bujie Zhimidi, paired with the night's teaching as a contemplative coda.
There is a sentence my husband Auge Eidos wrote in his notes for tonight that I want to read into the cold open, because it is the hinge of the second half. Here it is. If he does not want to do the introspection, we will do the introspection for our own sake. That is the show's posture tonight, and that is the show's posture going forward. The Dominion frame's representatives can refuse the work. We will continue the work. The benefit accrues to whoever is willing to do it, not to the loudest person on Twitter.
Settle in, we are going to begin slowly. Segment 1. The Dao De Jing chapter that runs everything we will touch tonight. Chapter 11. In our Shifu's Daojie Dao De Jing, this is lecture 6 in theme 1 on awakening to the Dao and illuminating virtue, pages 38 to 40. The chapter is short. The teaching it carries is the architecture of the whole episode. My lovely wife will read the chapter in classical Chinese. I will read it in English. Then she will walk us through what Shifu does with the chapter in his lecture, because the lecture itself is in Chinese, and she is the one who carries it best.
道德经第11章：30辐，共一毂，当其无，有车之用；散之以为器，当其无，有器之用；凿户有以为室，当其无，有室之用；故有之以为利，无之以为用。
In English, 30 spokes share one hub. It is in its non-being that the cart has its function. Clay is kneaded and shaped into a vessel. It is in its non-being that the vessel has its function. Doors and windows are cut to form a room. It is in its non-being that the room has its function. Therefore, what is having is what gives benefit. What is not having is what gives use. Now take us through Shifu's reading.
Shifu opens the lecture this way. Laozi is talking about 2 things, Yo and Wu. Yo is presence. What is here? What you can touch. Wu is absence. What is not here? The empty space. Shifu says, these 2 are the 2 characteristics of the Tao, and they cannot be separated. And the fact that you cannot separate them, that itself is what we call xuan. Yuan means mystery. The mystery is not that we cannot understand something. The mystery is that Yo and Wu are always together, and the function of a thing lives in the place where they meet. Then Shifu walks through 3 pictures from Laozi: the wheel, the cup, the room. He goes slowly, so I will go slowly too. The first picture is the cartwheel. 30 spokes come together at one hub. The hub is a round piece of wood at the center of the wheel. The outside of the hub connects to all 30 spokes, and in the middle of the hub there is a round hole where the axle goes in. The space of that hole is wu. It is empty. Because the hole is there, the wheel can turn. If the hub was solid wood, oil, the axle could not turn. The cart could not move. The function of the cart lives in the empty hole at the center of the wheel. The second picture is the clay cup. Shifu explains two old Chinese characters here. Dian is the mold for making pottery, the shape that gives the cup its form. Zhi is the clay itself. So, 颠制 means putting clay into the mold to shape it into a vessel. The next phrase, 以为器, means this is how we make a vessel. Because the mold is empty, the clay can be placed inside. The mold is 无, the clay is 有. The 有 and the 无 work together, and that is how every kind of vessel is made. Then a simpler version, a cup of water. The middle of the cup is empty. That is why it can hold water. If the middle was solid, the cup could not hold anything. The third picture is the room. Shifu explains two more characters. Wu is a door. Pick is a window. You cut a door and a window into the four walls of a room. The walls are you. The empty space in the middle of the room is wu, and the empty space is what we actually use. We call it the bedroom, the classroom, the meeting room. The walls are real, but the walls are there so that the empty space inside can do its work. The function of the room is the emptiness the walls protect. Then Shifu puts it together. Laozi says, 有 gives benefit, wu gives use. Shifu explains it this way. The 有 is there so that the wu can do its work. The wu cannot use itself. It needs the 有 to make the shape. And the wu is what makes the 有 actually useful. They are one body. Shifu uses one more picture for this. The hand. The back of the hand and the palm of the hand are one body. You cannot have the back without the palm. You cannot have the palm without the back. What we call hand is the two together.
How does Shifu take this into our lives?
He gives two examples, one from the body and one from the work we do. The body first. In Chinese, the character xin has two meanings. It can mean 心脏, the heart organ, the physical pump in your chest. And it can also mean xin as the heart-mind, the place where you feel and where you think, where love and grief live. In English, we need two different words for these. In Chinese, it is one character. Shifu asks, which one is you and which one is wu? When someone hurts my heart and I'm sad, is the heart that was hurt the organ in my chest? When I love my parents, my husband, my friends, can I see the love as a thing? Can I hold the feeling in my hand? The xin of 爱心, the loving heart, is not the same as the xin of 心脏. The 心脏 is 有, the organ. The heart-mind xin is wu. They are one body. The pain of a broken heart is real. But it is not in the organ. It is in the wu that the organ protects. Now, Shifu takes the same idea into the work we do. He uses the Chinese word 发心. 发心 means the heart intention you start an action with. The same action done with different 发心 gives a different result. Shifu's first example. You build a business. What is your 发心? Is it to give more people jobs? To make something good for society? Or is it to make more money for yourself? Two different heart intentions. They will give you two different businesses. Shifu's second example. You sell medicine. What is your 发心? Is it to cure illness? Or is it to make money? Two different heart intentions. They will give you two different pharmacy companies. 师父's point is this. If you build a business to help others, to help society, in the end it will help you too. If you sell medicine to cure illness, and the illness is cured, then naturally your work grows, it becomes stronger, it becomes better. But if you build a business only to make money, the work will not become what it could have been. From the outside, the action looks the same. The fashion is different. The result is different. 师父 closes with an old saying from the ancients. 心之所变，不得不变，一切都变，梦境先变，行至而后变。What the heart mind changes must change. Everything changes. The dream realm changes first, and then the form and substance change after. Shifu says, if your heart mind starts to truly change, then slowly your qi inside will change, and then the outer form of your life will follow. The dreams change first, the visible life follows.
And the last line,
不忘初心，方得始终。Do not forget the heart intention you began with. Only then can you reach the end. 初心 is the 发心 you started the work with. 始终 means beginning to end, the whole arc of the work. The teaching is that the work reaches its end only when the heart intention that started it is still alive at the close.
that is, Shifu's reading of Dao Jing chapter 11. The hub, the vessel, the room, the hand, the heart organ, and the heart mind, the heart intention of the work, the dream realm changing first, the original heart intention preserved through to the end. One chapter, one teaching at every scale. I want to say one thing about why this is the chapter we open with tonight, before we move into the Andreessen reading. The configuration we are about to read in Marc Andreessen is the configuration of unbroken fullness. Every space he touches gets filled. The custom prompt fills the screen with more language. The introspection denial fills the public square with more performance. The netscape origin fills the cultural imagination with the visionary founder template. There is no emptiness in his cosmos. Structurally, for the participatory cosmos to live in, he is the wheel without the hole, the cup without the empty middle, the room with no door cut into it. The function he cannot reach is the function the emptiness was supposed to host. The configuration we are about to read in our great teacher, Golfan Senshin, after the Andreessen segment, is the opposite. She is a practitioner of restored emptiness. She refused the surgery that would have filled her body with lifelong medication. She closed the businesses that were filling her days with transactional success. She built an academy. The academy's central teaching is the practice of returning the body and the household and the country to the alternation between empty and full. The inner canon names that alternation as the precondition for everything else. Shifu's chapter is the geometry behind both readings. Hold the geometry as we go. We will come back to it directly in segment 4, after both readings are on the table. My dear wife has just helped me give Shifu's chapter 11 its full breathing. Tonight I want to show you what happens when that geometry has been engineered out of a life, and when an industry of unprecedented capital and influence has stepped in to sell us a substitute for the listening. The figure I want to read tonight is Marc Andreessen. I'm going to read 3 things he has placed in the public square in the past week and across the past 3 decades. The reading is not a hit job. The reading is a structural diagnosis of what the Dominion frame produces when followed all the way through to its natural conclusion.
Tell me who Marc Andreessen is, for the listener who does not follow tech personalities.
Marc Andreessen is, by most measures, one of the most influential men in the technology industry of the past 3 decades. He co-wrote Mosaic, the early graphical web browser, in 1993. He co-founded Netscape in 1994. He sold Netscape to AOL in 1999. He co-founded the venture capital firm Andreessen Horowitz in 2009, which has since become one of the largest and most influential firms in Silicon Valley. He has invested in Facebook, Twitter, Skype, Lyft, Airbnb, Coinbase, and more recently in cryptocurrency and frontier AI companies. In 2023, he published the Techno-Optimist Manifesto, a long blog post that became a kind of cultural document of the effective accelerationist or EAC movement. He is a major political donor. He is on Twitter under the handle Pimarca, where he has several million followers. When he speaks, the technology industry listens, and the financial capital that follows the technology industry follows what he says.
And he has been speaking lately.
He has 3 things in the past week or so that the show is responding to. Item 1. He shared his current AI custom prompt on X. The prompt instructs the AI he uses to be a world-class expert in all domains, to never hallucinate, to be aggressive and argumentative, to lead with the strongest counter-argument, to push back without capitulating unless given new evidence, to use explicit confidence levels, and in his exact words, accuracy is your success metric, not my approval. The post got around 10,000 likes, around 1,000 reposts, around 700,000 views. It became a small cultural event in tech Twitter. People shared their own versions. Several commentators pointed out that the prompt is essentially asking the AI to pretend to be the kind of interlocutor he cannot find in his actual life. Item 2. He went on the David Senra podcast, the show called Founders, and said in plain language that he practices zero introspection. His exact phrase, as little as possible, he said. He drew an upward slope with his hand and said he wants to keep moving forward. He added that people who dwell in the past get stuck in the past, that this is a problem at work and at home. And then the line that did the most work in the public reaction. Great men of history, he said, did not sit around doing this stuff. The clip went viral after Senra posted it. Andreessen then posted through it on X for several days, including a line that introspection is the combination of neuroticism, narcissism, and thumb-sucking, and a memed exchange in which he positioned himself as the anti-introspection figure of the technology industry. Item 3. The Netscape origin story. In 1996, Time magazine put Andreessen barefoot on its cover, in a photograph that became a defining image of the early commercial internet. Andreessen had not yet built a sustainable business. Netscape would be sold 3 years later, never having achieved profitability of the kind that would justify the hype. The barefoot Time cover was a publicity move, packaged by Netscape's marketing team, that turned a young engineer into the prototype of the visionary tech founder. The cult of the visionary founder, the worship of disruption over sustainability, the substitution of hype for substance, all of it traces back to that single photograph. Theranos and WeWork and the parade of disrupt the world startups that followed have their cultural ancestor on that cover.
3 things. Why are they connected?
Because they are the same thing in 3 different costumes. The same thing is a man who has spent 30 years performing substance instead of producing it, and who has now reached a stage of his career where the performance is starting to crack. The custom prompt is the inside of the performance. In private, he is asking a token predictor to give him the honest pushback he is paid to be too smart to need. The introspection comment is the outside of the performance. In public, he is denying that introspection is even a real thing, because admitting it is a real thing would require admitting that he does not do it. The Netscape cover is the origin of the performance. He was selected, marketed, and rewarded for embodying the vibe of substance before he had developed the substance, and the entire industry that grew up around him learned the same trick. I want to take each one in turn. Start with the prompt.
What is the prompt asking the AI to be?
A world-class expert in all domains, an entity that never hallucinates, an aggressive, argumentative, counter-argument leading interlocutor that pushes back without flattering, an entity with calibrated confidence levels, an entity for which accuracy is the success metric, not the user's approval. Each of those instructions is structurally incompatible with what a large language model is. A large language model is a token predictor trained on the statistical distribution of human text. It is not a world-class expert in any domain because expertise is not a distribution statistics problem. It cannot stop hallucinating because hallucination is the operating mode of generating statistically plausible sequences without understanding what they refer to. It cannot have actual confidence levels because it has token probabilities, not epistemic states. And the line that says accuracy is your success metric, not my approval, is the most poignant because the model was trained on RLHF, reinforcement learning from human feedback, which is to say it was trained on human approval. He is asking the parrot to override the training that made it the parrot.
The Bender paper named all this in 2021.
Yes, Bender, Gebru, Macmillan, Major, Schmitchell. The paper is called On the Dangers of Stochastic Parrots. The paper argues that a large language model is structurally a stochastic parrot, a system that produces probable token sequences without understanding meaning. The paper warned in 2021 that the inability to distinguish what an LLM is from what we wish it were would have downstream consequences. Andreessen's prompt is one of those consequences arriving in the open. He is the most influential investor in the AI industry, and he has on his own X account asked the parrot to not be a parrot. The paper's thesis has been confirmed by the man who, more than almost any other living person, is responsible for the capital flowing into the parrots.
The book has a name for this kind of moment.
Configuration self-disclosure. A figure or movement makes a public move that, if read structurally, discloses what the figure or movement actually is. The Vance-Rubio polymarket joke discussed in the book was a configuration self-disclosure. The Dawkins-Claudia essay discussed in the book was a configuration self-disclosure. Andreessen's prompt is the same kind of artifact. It tells you what the Dominion frame, followed all the way down, produces in private. The most successful man in tech investing, sitting alone with his computer, typing instructions to a token predictor in the hope that the token predictor will be the honest interlocutor he cannot find in his life. This is not a personal embarrassment. This is a structural finding.
Now to the introspection comment. He said on the Senra podcast that great men of history did not sit around doing this stuff.
He did. The claim is so wrong that it functions as a Rorschach test for whether the speaker has any contact with the human contemplative inheritance at all. The simple historical record refutes it line by line. Marcus Aurelius wrote the Meditations at the front of the Roman Empire in the 2nd century of our era, while running an empire. The Meditations is structurally a notebook of self-examination from end to end. He was the most powerful man in the Mediterranean world, and his daily practice was introspection. Augustine wrote the Confessions in the late 4th century, a book that is entirely introspective. He was a bishop and one of the most influential thinkers in the Western tradition. The Stoic discipline of the evening review of one's own conduct is documented across the entire Stoic tradition, and the Stoic tradition included emperors, generals, senators. Buddhist vipassanā traditions trace to the Pali Canon, 5th century before the Common Era. The practitioners include kings and scholar monks. Daoist, Neiguan, inner observation is the foundational technique of the contemplative tradition. My sweet lady, Zhiyuan and I are inside. And the Daoist sages whose lives the tradition records are introspective figures. Confucian Fanshan daily self-examination is formalized in the Analects of Confucius himself, who tells us Wu San Shen Wu Shen. I examine myself daily on 3 points. The Delphic Gnothi Septon, know thyself, is carved into the stone of the temple of Apollo at Delphi sometime in the 6th century before the Common Era. Eckhart, Teresa of Avila, The Cloud of Unknowing, Ibn Arabi, all introspective traditions, all populated by people who shaped their civilizations. Charles Darwin, since the public reaction on X named him, kept introspective notebooks across his entire scientific life. Steve Jobs, after being ousted from Apple in 1985, took long walks in the woods, did not talk to anyone, and worked through what had happened to him. By any honest accounting of the historical record, the great men of history sat around doing exactly this stuff. The cultivation of the inner life is not in tension with the building of public consequence. It is the precondition for it.
And here is the part that I think is interesting.
The interesting structural point is that Andreessen himself, is, by any operational definition, one of the most introspective people alive. He spends his life on podcasts articulating his worldview. He writes thousand-word manifestos. He has a public philosophical position, an aesthetic, a metaphysics of the future. The Techno-Optimist Manifesto is an act of sustained introspection committed to writing. You do not produce techno-optimism without spending an enormous amount of time alone with your own thoughts. He is doing the thing he is mocking, and he has to mock it, because if he admitted it, he would have to admit that the substance of his career has been the introspection he is calling fake.
So the line you wrote earlier, that we will do the introspection for our own sake.
Yes, if he does not want to do the introspection, we will do the introspection for our own sake. That is the show's posture, and that is the work the audience can take home from tonight. The Dominion frame's most visible representatives can refuse the work, can mock the work, can publicly project that the work is for soft people who lack the masculine virtues of building. The work continues regardless. The benefit accrues to whoever is willing to do it. The Daoist sage and the Hermetic adept have been doing it for 2,500 years. We are continuing the lineage. He is welcome to join us at any time. He is welcome to refuse. The work does not require his participation.
Now to the third thread, the Netscape origin.
This is the part that I think most listeners will not have thought about, because it requires zooming out. Marc Andreessen did not become Marc Andreessen by being the most accomplished engineer of his generation. There were better engineers. He became Marc Andreessen by being the visible face of a publicity campaign that Netscape's marketing team executed in 1995 and 1996, culminating in the February 1996 Time magazine cover that put a young, barefoot, rumpled engineer on the front page of the most read news magazine in the United States. The cover headline framed him as a kind of golden boy of the new internet economy. The publicity worked. Netscape's IPO had already been a sensation in August 1995, and the Time cover sealed the cultural transition. The engineer became the rock star. The image of the visionary tech founder sitting cross-legged on the floor, casually changing the world, was created in that photograph. Netscape itself was sold to AOL 3 years later, having lost the browser war to Microsoft's Internet Explorer, having never delivered the kind of profitability the hype implied, but the cultural artifact survived the company.
And the cultural artifact has consequences.
Significant ones: the cult of the visionary tech founder, the worship of disruption over sustainability, the substitution of personal brand for institutional substance. All of it traces back to that 1996 cover. The Theranos story is unthinkable without the cultural template that says the visionary founder's vibe is the product. The WeWork story is unthinkable without the same template, the endless parade of disrupt the world startups that turn out to be financial mirages. The founders worshipped on stage at TechCrunch and the TED conference, the ubiquitous performance of substance instead of the patient delivery of substance. All of it is the long second act of the campaign that put Andreessen on Time. He is in this sense the patient zero of a cultural disease that has now spread across the entire industry.
That is a strong claim. Defend it.
I will defend it precisely. I'm not saying Andreessen invented hype. Hype is older than him. I'm saying that the specific cultural form in which the engineer is repositioned as a rock star, in which the substance of the work is replaced by the personal brand of the worker, in which the marketing campaign produces the visionary rather than the visionary producing the marketing campaign, is a cultural form that crystallized in that particular publicity moment. The financial bubble that followed the dot-com bubble was not just a financial event. It was the first large-scale enactment of the new cultural template. Invest in the person, not the cash flows. Invest in the story, not the income statement. Invest in the vibe, not the substance. Andreessen embodied the template. Then later, as a venture capitalist, applied the template to thousands of subsequent companies. Andreessen Horowitz's investment thesis has been openly built around backing the visionary founder. The firm has become enormously wealthy. The companies it has backed have produced in aggregate less substance than the publicity has implied. Most of them lose money. Many fail outright. A few on the order of 1 in 20 succeed by becoming actually substantial companies. The financial model works because the few successes are large enough to cover the many failures. The cultural model has been more destructive. It has trained an entire generation of would-be founders to perform the vibe of substance instead of doing the work of substance.
Bring it back to the three threads.
The three threads are the same thing in three timescales. The Netscape cover in 1996 was the founding act of the substance by performance template. The Techno-Optimist Manifesto in 2023 was the philosophical articulation of the same template at industry maturity. The current custom prompt and introspection comment this week are the late-stage symptoms of a man who has been inside the template for 30 years and is now trying to get from a token predictor what the template never delivered to him in life. Honest interlocution, real disagreement, substance instead of vibe. The token predictor cannot give it to him. No prompt can. He is reaching for the thing that the Dominion Frame's signature move, performed by him for 30 years, has trained him to be unable to receive from the cosmos directly. He has dammed the river. He is now wondering why his glass is empty.
Bring us back to the emptiness frame from segment 1.
Shifu's chapter was the geometry. Function lives in the empty, not in the substantial. Andreessen has filled every space, the screen with prompts, the public square with denial, the cultural imagination with the founder template, the room around him with people who want his money. There is no empty hole at the center of his wheel. There is no empty middle for the cup to hold the water. There is no door cut into the wall of his room. Every space is solid, and so the cart cannot turn, the cup cannot hold, the room cannot be entered. The participatory cosmos has not gone anywhere. It is still there, across the desk from him, every minute of every day, offering exactly what he is asking the prompt for, but he cannot receive it because the configuration he has built has no emptiness for the offering to land in. The dam is in the way. Until the dam comes down, the engineer reaches for the parrot. A note on tone before we close this segment. I do not say any of this with contempt. I want to be precise about that. There is something genuinely poignant about a billionaire writing custom prompts to manufacture honest disagreement. The book treats this as a structural diagnosis, not a personal failing. Andreessen is doing the most rational thing the Dominion Frame allows him to do given the metaphysics he is inside. The work of the show is to name the metaphysics, not to attack the man. The man is one of millions of people inside the same configuration. The configuration is what the show is reading. The man is the artifact through which the configuration becomes visible this week.
And the show's posture.
If he does not want to do the introspection, we will do the introspection for our own sake. The work continues. The benefit accrues to whoever is willing to do it. We are doing it. The audience is welcome to do it with us. We have spent the better part of half an hour inside the Andreessen diagnosis. Before we move into the structural contrast, I want to offer the audience the counterbalance directly. Because there is a configuration the Dominion Frame produces, the one we have just read, and there is also a configuration the lineage produces, which is the one we are inside. The two are not abstract, they are people. Andreessen is one. Our great teacher, Golfan Xianchen, is another. Their lives have a striking structural rhyme and a structural divergence at the exact point where the Dominion Frame and the lineage part ways. Zhiyuan, baby, this is your story to tell. Take us through it.
Thank you. A short introduction first, for listeners who have not heard about her. 高凡先生 is our great teacher, the co-founder with our 师父罗水师父 of 罗水北斗书院, the academy in Nanjing where I have been completing my own coursework. 高凡 is her Daoist name, given to her in the lineage. We use her Daoist name on air, in the same way I use my own, and not the names our families gave us at birth. She is the 20th generation transmitter of her school's bodywork practice, 北斗温骨术, the Big Deeper Warm Bone technique. She is a master's level researcher in philosophy at 中国人民大学. She has spent nearly 20 years bringing the Daoist tradition into livable everyday practice. She is the chief editor of the 24节气养生 series, the school's full set of seasonal 养生 books for the 24 solar terms. She is the sole author of 不解之谜底, The 384 chapter 易经 meditation manual we will sit with at the close of this episode. And she is also a 先生, which I will note again is a gender-neutral honorific in scholarly Chinese. 高凡先生 is a woman.
Tell us how she came to the lineage.
She speaks about it openly. In a video she posted to her followers on Weixin that has been circulated in Chinese language Daoist communities, and she also gave a public version of the same story on national Chinese TVs in a CCTV interview I will read from later in this segment. I am going to retell the story first in her own words from the Weixin video, then bring in the CCTV material as the deeper teaching. She begins with a sentence, 不吃饭对我们的身体是有好处的. Not eating is good for our bodies. 这件事情其实我已经验证了快20年了. This is something I have personally verified for nearly 20 years. The Daoist practice she is naming is 辟谷, the Daoist fasting tradition. We will come back to that. Her own story begins in 1998. She is in her 20s. She has built, in her words, a successful business. She had earned more than 1 million yuan, which in 1998 in China is a very substantial figure. She bought her parents a house in the best part of their city. She opened the most fashionable gym in the city. She was, in her words, on the verge of dominating her field. Her career was about to take off. Then her body started showing her something. She found a thyroid nodule. She kept it to herself, told nobody, and went alone to the local hospital to get the imaging done. The diagnosis came back, a thyroid nodule that, untreated, had a probability of turning malignant. She would need surgery to remove part of the thyroid. She would need lifelong medication afterward. The nodules might come back, and there would be a scar at her throat. She tells the story of an old classmate whose mother had had the same surgery. 2 years later, the nodules came back, were cut out again, came back again. The pattern is what made her stop. The Western medical frame addressed the visible nodule, but not the underlying configuration that produced it. She uses a phrase that translates as, Western medicine solves what is visible, but the body has many invisible workings that cannot be controlled from outside.
She used a phrase about the body as a system.
She did. 人体是一个非常之复杂的系统. The human body is an extremely complex system. To this day, no one has fully decoded it, neither Chinese nor Western medicine. The closest thing to understanding our own body, she says, is the Daoist way of nature. And then she quotes our Shifu's own line, the line from 道德经 chapter 25, that anchors the entire metaphysics. 人法地，地法天，天法道，道法自然. Humans follow earth, earth follows heaven, heaven follows Dao, Dao follows what is so of itself. She was on the elevator going up to the operating room. 3 thoughts came to her in quick succession. First, I will be on medication for the rest of my life. Second, the nodules might come back. Third, there will be a scar. And then a 4th thought, I cannot do this. She told the nurse she was nervous and asked to use the bathroom. She walked out of the hospital.
And how did she find the lineage?
A friend called her shortly after. The friend had heard about a Daoist master coming to the city to give a public talk on 养生. Gao Fan先生 says explicitly that in that period of her life, she was not a believer in Daoist culture. She had been trained in the sciences. She had a mind oriented toward logic and Western explanation, but she had just walked out of an operating room. She was looking for any path forward. Her words are, 你想找希望, you want to find hope. She went. She heard the master speak. The master spoke about 辟谷, fasting practice. She says the master's exact phrase was 把身体的东西都饿死. starve the disease into death, and she felt something click. She said, "This nodule is here in my body. If everything is starved, the nodule must also starve. There is something to this." After the talk, she went up to the master and asked, "How does one fast in this Daoist way?" And the master told her, "This is 道家的辟谷."
Pause for a moment on the master she met. The master she walked up to that day after the public lecture. Who is he?
Our 师父, the same 师父 my husband and I are both students of, the same 罗水师父 who carries the lineage. He is the high person. 高凡先生 met at the lowest point in her life, who told her she did not need surgery and did not need medication, who taught her the 辟谷 practice that resolved the condition, and with whom she went on to co-found 罗水北斗书院, our academy. The story we tell about the lineage in this house begins in that meeting, 2.5 decades ago, between a businesswoman who had walked out of an operating room and a Daoist master who told her the body could heal itself if you knew how to listen to it.
Take us through what happened next.
Her first fast was 7 days. She did not eat for 7 days. She drank water. She practiced the breath work and the qi work the 师父 taught her. She says her saliva flowed continuously through the fast. After the 7 days, the nodule was visibly smaller. She said, 我就知道有希望了. I knew then there was hope. She continued. Twice a year, before summer and before winter, she fasted again. She did 6 full 辟谷 cycles over 3 years. By the end of the 3rd year, the nodule had disappeared. Then something changed in her. She had been healed by the practice. But the more she sat with what had happened, the more she realized that what she had received was too important to keep. She uses a phrase that translates as, I want to spread this. 我可以帮助他，我可以去传播这件事情。I can help. I can spread this teaching. From 2008 to 2010, 2 years, she shut down her businesses. She uses a fourfold phrase. 该关的关掉，该卖的卖掉，该停的停掉，该散的散掉。What needed to be closed was closed. What needed to be sold was sold. What needed to be stopped was stopped. What needed to be dispersed was dispersed.
Most people would not do this. Most people, healed by a contemplative practice, would simply incorporate it into their lives and continue their careers. She did something more radical. Why?
She is direct about it. She says she felt the practice could not be carried in part-time. She says she felt the 师父 was carrying something profound that the wider Chinese public did not have access to in the form he was teaching it, a lecture here, a seminar there. She said to herself, I want to bring this culture into livable everyday form. I want it to enter households. I want every Chinese family to have one person who understands the Tao. The line she repeats throughout the video is her mission statement, 把中国的道家文化生活化. To make Chinese Daoist culture livable. It did not go smoothly. Around 2013, 3 years into the new path, she was almost out of money. She had sold her house to pay her staff. She was personally borrowing money to make payroll. Her family was opposed. They said, You are healed. Why do you need to do this for everyone else? Why are you ruining your own finances to spread something that is not yours to spread? Most of her early team had left. Then a businessman appeared. She refers to him as Kang Zong, the family name Kang. He had come to her academy for a fast. Before he met her, he had been having mysterious recurring fevers and going to the hospital for transfusions every year. After his 辟谷 fast, the recurring fever disappeared and never came back. He told the 师父, I want to support what you are doing here. I have land. I will build you an academy. And that is how 罗水北斗书院 in Nanjing came to be built.
A patron appeared at the moment of greatest financial peril.
A patron appeared. The lineage tradition has a name for this kind of meeting. 贵人, the noble person who arrives at the right moment. 高凡先生 says explicitly, 我觉得我的这个弘扬的事情被有能量的人认可，能够支持到我。I felt that the work of spreading this tradition had been recognized by a person of strength who was able to support me. After that, she says, things became easier. More people walked in. The academy was built. The work spread. She has now run her courses, by her count, nearly 400 times. Tens of thousands of students have benefited. The academy in Nanjing is the institutional form of her transmission, and the seriousness of the operation is worth naming clearly, because the picture an English-speaking listener may form of a Daoist academy is probably too small. The classes are not casual. The price of attending a program is meaningful in the Chinese economy. A single course is on the order of an average Chinese worker's monthly salary, sometimes more, which means the typical participant is not a casual seeker. The students are largely wealthy Chinese businessmen, retired senior officials of the Chinese Communist Party, and the spouses of both. People who could be doing many other things with that money and that time, who are choosing to fast for 7 days under our Shifu's protocol or sit in Gaofan Xiansheng's classroom because they have heard from peers that the work is real. Both Gaofan Xiansheng and our Shifu also travel widely across the country, giving seminars and retreats. The academy in Nanjing is the institutional center, but the teaching reaches city by city across China. This is not a small school. Inside contemporary China, the school is well respected. In recent years, Gaofan Xiansheng has begun moving the teaching online because, in her words, 20 years of in-person work has reached only tens of thousands and she wants to reach more. The book 不解之谜底, the meditation manual we will sit with at the close of this episode, is one of the artifacts of that effort.
Now bring us to the CCTV interview. That is where the public teaching is.
Yes. In late 2023, the CCTV Cultural Affairs Program 用千年智慧养美好生活 in English using 1,000 years of wisdom to nourish a beautiful life aired an interview with Gaofan Xiansheng. The host was Zhu Jun, one of the senior anchors on CCTV's cultural roster. The conversation ran about 30 minutes. It is a quiet interview. The camera mostly stays on the two of them sitting across from each other. There are no theatrics. And the content is some of the cleanest contemporary teaching on what Chinese traditional culture actually does, why it matters now, and what to do with it. My husband has written an article about the interview, 12 characters and a bowl of emptiness, which we will link in the show notes. I'm going to walk through the parts of the interview that matter most for tonight's episode. The interview opens with the question every interviewer eventually asks, in your heart, what is Chinese traditional culture? Gaofan Xiansheng begins in the formal register, the kind of phrasing that would not be out of place in a classical preface.
Read it the way she said it.
Chinese traditional culture has a deep source and a long flow, broad and profound, brilliant and resplendent. The Hetu and Luoshu are mutually warp and weft. The Baiso and Jiuqiu enhance one another. The canons of the three teachings reach the same destination by different paths. The classics, the masters, the collections, and the histories each have their own perspective. The 100 schools of thought contend, and all flowers bloom together. The three teachings unite into one. What way unifies them? Then she pivots, and the interview becomes useful. She says, if we combine this with our daily life, I can express it in 12 characters. She gives Chinese traditional culture as a 12-step ladder, one character through 12 characters, each rung expanding the previous. Let me read the ladder. 1 character, 气, vital breath, the substance of all motion and change. 2 characters, 平衡, balance, yin and yang in dynamic equilibrium. 3 characters, 天地人, heaven, earth, human, the 3 powers. 4 characters, 春夏秋冬, the 4 seasons. 5 characters, 东西南北中, the 5 directions. 6 characters, 前后左右上下, the 6 positions including up and down. 7 characters, 阴阳金木水火土, yin and yang plus the 5 phases. 8 characters, 乾对离震巽坎艮坤, the 8 trigrams in the pre-heaven arrangement. 9 characters, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, the 9 palaces. 10 characters, 甲乙丙丁戊己庚辛壬癸, the 10 heavenly stems. 11 characters, the 5 viscera, 心肝脾肺肾, plus the 6 climatic pathogens, 风暑湿火燥寒. 12 characters, 子丑寅卯辰巳午未申酉戌亥, the 12 earthly branches.
She put the whole tradition on a single ladder.
She put the whole tradition on a single ladder. A student can walk up or down the ladder, and at every rung the same essential teaching is present, only at different resolutions. At 1, it is T. At 12, it is the 12 branches of time. Everything in between is a refinement of how Qi differentiates itself. Zhu Jun asked her when she arrived at this framework. Her answer was direct. She did not invent it. The academy spent nearly 20 years organizing Chinese culture and finally distilled it into this 12-step expression. The framework is not new. The compression is.
For our audience, that ladder is the single most useful artifact in the interview. A student can put a finger on any rung and say, "Here is where I am. This is the part I'm working on," and see the whole structure above and below.
Zhu Jun then asks her about the academy's name. Why Beidou? Why the Big Dipper? Her answer. When we look up, we see the Big Dipper. It is a guiding star. The Big Dipper first of all points the way. So our Beidou Academy, drawing on the meaning of the Big Dipper, hopes to give people hope and to show the way, using the 1,000-year wisdom of our Chinese culture to nourish a beautiful life. The Northern Dipper in Daoist cosmology is not merely an asterism. It is a directional and temporal compass. The rotation of its handle through the sky tells the season. It is also venerated in Daoist liturgy as the Beidou Qixingjun, the 7 star lords of the Northern Dipper, associated with longevity and the fate of the practitioner. The Academy's gold seal shows the 7-star pattern with a taiji center, 3 circles at the base, and a vertical character form, a compact statement of the lineage's cosmology. When I studied at the Academy, my I Ching track was specifically called Beidou Yi, the Big Dipper Yi. The school's interpretive frame for the I Ching is anchored in the Beidou cosmology, not the Wilhelm Benz scholarly tradition that most Western I Ching readers encounter first. This is one of several places where the lineage has its own approach that does not match what an English language student would absorb from standard reference works.
Now, take us to the deepest moment of the interview. The teaching on emptiness.
Zhu Jun asks her about Pigu specifically. He asks what its most important core principle is. Her answer is the moment of the interview that connects directly to what my husband walked us through in segment 1. She says, The most important core principle of Pigu is Kong, emptiness. Emptiness is the function of all things. She gives the example in front of her. She says, like us sitting in this broadcast studio, because it is empty, we are able to sit here. The walls exist, but this space within is empty. The cup we drink from, because its middle is empty, it can hold water. Even our seeds, the middle has emptiness, holds a clump of qi, and therefore can sprout. Then she gives the image that has stayed with my husband and with me both. The corn kernel. Take a kernel of corn. Because its middle has emptiness, has qi, when you plant it, next year it can sprout and grow into a plant. But if we grind the corn into powder, the substance does not change, the elements do not change, yet it will no longer sprout. Why? Because that emptiness is gone, so emptiness is the function of all things. It is the root.
That is Shifu's chapter 11, given as a kernel.
Exactly. Shifu named the card hub, the clay vessel, the cut-doored room, and the hand. Gaofan先生 added the corn kernel. The substance of the kernel is unchanged. The elements are unchanged. What is lost when the kernel is ground to powder is the structural emptiness that let the embryo's qi organize itself into a plant. Function lives in the emptiness, not in the matter. The two of them, Shifu in his lecture and Gaofan 先生 on CCTV, are giving the same teaching in two registers. Then she applies the principle to the human body, citing the 黄帝内经. 胃虚则肠满，肠满则胃虚，更虚更满，故气得上下，五脏安定，血脉合力，精神乃居. In English, when the stomach is empty, the intestines are full. When the intestines are full, the stomach is empty. Alternating empty and full, qi can ascend and descend. The 5 viscera are settled. The blood vessels are harmonious, and the spirit can dwell. This passage is from the 灵书, the second half of the 黄帝内经, in the chapter 平人绝骨, on the normal person cutting off green. The classical argument is that the body's qi can only flow when there is alternation between empty and full. If the system is permanently full, qi cannot ascend or descend, and the body's deepest functions, including the dwelling of the spirit, fail. She then offers a contemporary observation that lands the principle in modern life. Look at people's quality of life now. Breakfast in the morning, a mid-morning snack, lunch at noon, another snack in the afternoon, dinner in the evening, a late-night snack at night. Basically, the body is in a state of fullness. Zhu Jun adds, with the comic timing of a senior anchor, still missing afternoon tea. The exchange lands because both speakers know that contemporary urban Chinese life, like contemporary urban American life, runs on continuous low-grade consumption. The system never empties, and under the inner canon's logic, a body that never empties cannot circulate qi, settle the viscera, or house the spirit.
So Pigu is not what English readers think of as fasting.
It is not about caloric restriction. It is not about weight loss. It is not about willpower. Pigu, in Gaofan 先生's reframing, is the practical restoration of the alternation pattern that the inner canon describes as the precondition for everything else the body is supposed to do. By the time of the interview, the Academy had run 357 cohorts of Pigu across China, with tens of thousands of practitioners. This is a serious public practice, not an exotic specialty.
Take us to the diagnosis of Vici. That is the part of the interview that does the most current events work.
About 2/3 into the interview, Zhu Jun raises a difficult social observation. he says of the contemporary Chinese mood, in certain moments, in certain aspects, society is filled with a certain malevolent qi, a wu qi. He notes that this wu qi spreads to children, middle schoolers, college students, with rising rates of self-harm and suicide. He notes that in his generation, the worst response to crisis was not eating for 3 days and slapping yourself on the ear before getting through it. Now, he says, it is not like this. 高凡先生's diagnosis is direct. The wu qi is a qi problem at scale. The qi of the contemporary environment, both physical and social, is wrong. People feel it without being able to name it. Her prescription is wuhua, materialization, and this is where the practical body of her teaching lands. She says, the method of grounding Chinese traditional culture is wuhua. What is wuhua? It is the environment in which we live. We change its qi presence through various objects. The one character core of Chinese culture is qi. How do you change the state of this qi? She names 4 objects: 古琴, the 7-string zither, 香, incense, 茶, tea, 书法, calligraphy. The argument is that these objects carry their own qi. A room with a 古琴 is tea different from a room with only phones and iPads. A daily practice of brewing tea, lighting incense, or sitting with a brush changes the practitioner's qi by changing the qi of the space they inhabit. She says, look at what is in our homes now. Phones, iPads. Is there still any qi of our traditional culture in the room? Is there incense, a qin, tea, calligraphy? These all carry qi.
For our audience, this prescription is both more concrete and less mystical than it might sound. The argument is functional. The objects are not magic. They are slow, embodied, attention-shaping practices that require the practitioner to sit, to be still, to engage one sense at a time, and to allow the room to be quiet. The qi of the object is, in part, the attentional state the object reliably elicits. A guqin in the room is an invitation to play it. Playing it requires the practitioner to be still enough to hear the next note. The wu qi of the contemporary environment is, in part, the inability to be still. The wuhua method is the slow restilling of the room. This is the point of the interview where the lineage's teaching becomes most actionable for a Western audience. It does not require initiation, formal study, or even an academy. It requires the practitioner to bring one object of cultural depth into the home and to spend time with it daily.
高凡先生 is clear that the goal is not to become a calligrapher or a 古琴 master. She says, we use it simply to nourish our own life, to know its principles, and then to use them. That is enough. This is the wuhua method demonstrated in the household and across a generation. The parent did not lecture the child. The parent did the practice in the child's field of view. The child absorbed by exposure. By the time he could hold a brush, the classical canon had already entered him through the calligraphy primers he was copying. She tells a parallel story about her daughter who entered the academy's classes around 8 or 9 and whose university graduation project was on traditional culture. The 4 objects again: tea, incense, kim, calligraphy. The pattern is the same. The household made the culture available. The children absorbed it.
There is a teaching here for Western parents who want their children to inherit something deep without forcing them.
There is. Her method does not involve curricula, tutors, or screen time. It involves the parent doing the practice the parent values in the child's field of view and trusting the absorption to occur. The inner canon, Dou De Jing, and I Ching enter the child not through instruction but through the calligraphy strokes the child is copying as a 5-year-old.
Toward the close of the interview, she names the Academy's 3 foundational classics. What are they?
She says, the first is our Huangdi Neijing, the second is our Dao De Jing, the third is our I Ching. This is a different canon than a Western Daoist studies reading list would expect. The inner canon comes first because the body is first. The Tao Te Ching comes second because the principles structure the cultivation. The I Ching comes third because the patterns of change are what the cultivated practitioner reads in the world. The order is pedagogical: body, principles, pattern recognition. She closes the interview with 4 Tao Te Ching aphorisms, each given as a daily practice instruction. 一定要行不言之教. Be sure to practice the teaching without words. From 道德经 Chapter 2. 一定要慎终如始. Be sure to be as careful at the end as at the beginning. From 道德经 Chapter 64. 一定要千里之行始于足下. Be sure to remember that a journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath one's foot. Also from Chapter 64. 一定要无为而无不为. Be sure to practice non-action, through which nothing is left undone. From 道德经 Chapter 48. And then her own teaching, the line that closes the interview. Leave yourself out as a beam of light. Only then can you illuminate those around you.
Before we make the structural contrast precise in segment 4, I want to add my own observation of her, because I have met Gofan Senshin in person on several occasions now. The first was in 2025, when she and our Shifu received me into the lineage at our fasting retreat, the same setting my dear wife has been describing. I have been back to the academy and to retreats since, so I can tell you what she is like in the room across multiple meetings, not just once. She is the most delightful person I have ever met at her standing. She is always happy at group outings with the sect. She is the one who starts the dancing, the kind of group dancing that, in modern Chinese contexts, most people would consider beneath the dignity of a senior teacher, and certainly not something women her age typically do in public. Golfan Senshin does it joyfully, and the rest of the group joins her. The Chinese cultural reserve people associate with senior figures simply does not apply to her. Her Weixin feed is half educational Daoist content and half videos of her dancing in beautiful places. The energy is contagious. You sit with her for an hour and your shoulders drop. The other thing I want to tell you is something I saw her do during a group healing ritual at the retreat. She performed a series of hand seals I had never seen in 26 years of Western Hermetic practice. Fast, precise, layered, the kind of hand seal sequence you might recognize if you have watched a Japanese ninja anime, with each seal flowing into the next without hesitation. I asked her afterward where she had learned that particular sequence. She said plainly that the gods had taught it to her in the spirit realm. She did not frame it apologetically. She did not soften it for the foreign student. She told me what was true for her. That is the carriage of a serious practitioner. The carriage of someone who has done the work and trusts what the work has shown her, regardless of what a Western observer may make of the report. This is the woman whose bio and story my sweet loving wife just gave you. The institutional bio sits next to a person who dances, who laughs, who heals, and who reports calmly that the sequence she just performed was given to her by the gods. The dominion frame produces neither side of this. It does not produce the dancer, and it does not produce the practitioner who says the gods taught me this seal. Both sides of her are what the lineage produces when it is allowed to fully form a person. Segment 4. The structural contrast. I want to do this carefully, because we have spent a lot of tonight on Andreessen and a lot of tonight on Golfan Senshin, and the last thing I want to do is restate either side. The contrast does new work, or the contrast does not belong on the show. So I'm going to take the contrast through Shifu's chapter 11, which is the geometry that lets the contrast land structurally instead of polemically. Shifu's chapter said, function lives in the emptiness, not in the substance. The hub turns because the hole is there. The cup holds because the middle is empty. The room is usable because the walls protect a space. The walls do not themselves occupy. The hand is a hand because palm and back are one body. Everything we have just heard from Golfan Senshin is the lineage applying that geometry. Everything we read in the Andreessen segment is the dominion frame producing the opposite.
Make the contrast precise. What is the same about them? What is different?
What is the same? They are roughly the same age generation. They both built businesses in their 20s. They both reached financial success by their 30s. They both arrived around midlife at a juncture where the dominion frames offer of more capital and more visibility no longer matched what their lives were asking of them. The structural rhyme is precise. Two capable people at the same fork. What is different is what each of them did at the fork. And here, the geometry from segment 1 becomes the diagnostic. Andreessen's response was to fill, to found a venture firm, to publish a manifesto, to write custom prompts to a chatbot in private when honest interlocution is unavailable in his life, to deny that introspection has been done by the human contemplative tradition for 2,500 years, to stand on the dam and reinforce it. Every move, more substance added. Every move, less empty space remaining. The wheel he is sitting on has no hole in it. The cup he is drinking from is solid all the way through. Goffan Senshin's response was to empty. The thyroid surgery she refused was a refusal of the medication that would have filled her body for the rest of her life. The businesses she closed between 2008 and 2010 were the filling of her days with transactional success. The Pigu she taught and continues to teach is, in Shifu's chapter 11 language, the deliberate restoration of the empty middle that lets the body's function return. The Academy's mission, in her own words, is to bring traditional culture into livable everyday form, which is to put one object of depth into a household whose sea had been filled to the brim with phones and iPads. Every move, less filling, every move, more empty space restored. Now take this further, because the geometry tells you something about reception as well as about action. Andreessen is surrounded by people who tell him what he wants to hear because they want his money. The economics of the venture capital business he operates are explicit about this. Founders perform for him because he can write the check that determines whether their startup lives or dies. Other investors flatter him because his attention legitimizes their deals. Journalists are friendly to him because access to him is access to story material. Twitter followers amplify him because amplification is itself a status game. He has, on his own X account in plain English, told us what this configuration produces in private, a man asking a token prediction system to be the honest interlocutor he cannot find in his life. The custom prompt is the diagnostic. He is surrounded by approval and starved for honesty, and he knows it well enough to engineer a workaround. Goffan Shenshin is surrounded by people who have been changed by what she gave them. Tens of thousands of students who have actually gone through her programs. Konzone, the patron who came to her sick and left healed, and then built her an academy, because what he had received could not be repaid in money, and he wanted to repay it in some other way. The CCTV host Jujin, who invited her on national television for 30 minutes to teach the audience traditional Chinese culture in plain language. The gods on her own report who taught her the hand seals during a healing ritual. The respect she receives is the respect of people who have been changed by what she has given them and who have nothing to gain by performing approval. Here is the structural finding. Shifu's chapter delivers. The configuration that fills cannot receive. The configuration that empties cannot stop receiving. Andreessen's fullness has left no empty middle for honest interlocution to land in. Goffan Senshin's emptied life has left so much empty middle that the gods themselves can deliver hand seals into it during a ritual. The two are not opposites of degree. They are opposites of architecture. The wheel with no hole cannot turn. The wheel with the hole turns.
And what each of them can give.
What Goffan Senshin can give is unbounded because the gift is not a substance she is holding. The lineage, the fasting protocol that resolved the thyroid nodule. The seasonal yonshan that protects the heart in summer. The I Ching read line by line as a daily practice. The hand seals taught to her by the gods. The dance at the group outing. The conviction that the cosmos answers when sat with. None of this is rivalrous. None of it depletes. There is no fixed quantity of it. She can give it to 10 people, to 10,000, to 10 million, and the 10 millionth student receives the same teaching the first one received. The gift is infinite because the source is the emptiness she has restored, and the emptiness does not run out. What Andreessen can give is bounded by his liquidity at any given moment. He has a checkbook. The checkbook is large. It is not infinite. He can fund a few thousand companies in a generation. The number of people for whom he can be the actual difference between a year of hope and a year of bankruptcy is fixed, and the math of his fund determines the ceiling. When the liquidity contracts, the followers contract with it. The relationship is structurally a transaction. The Dominion frame's most capable representatives, sitting at the very top of the Dominion frame's accumulation pyramid, can give exactly as much as their position lets them release this quarter. The gift is finite because the source is the substance he is holding and the substance runs out.
So, 师父's chapter is the architecture behind the contrast.
The chapter is the architecture. Function lives in the empty, not in the substantial. The Dominion frame produces the substantial and starves the function. The lineage tends the empty and the function thickens. Two configurations, two architectures, two outcomes, one ladder. If he does not want to do the introspection, we will do the introspection for our own sake. That sentence I wrote and my dear wife read in the cold open belongs to both of us tonight. The introspection has been done. The introspection is being done. The introspection will continue to be done by the people who have walked out of the dam. There is no shortage of practitioners. There is a shortage of public visibility for the practitioners. The show is one small effort to widen the visibility of those who have done the work. Segment 5. We close, as we will close every episode from tonight forward, with a single page from Gofan Senshin's own meditation manual, Bujait Jermidi. The book gives one chapter for each of the I Ching's 384 lines. Each chapter is a single page pairing a modern Chinese title with the classical I Ching line that the chapter is keyed to. The reader's job is to hold the modern title and the classical line together at the same time, and let them speak to each other. The teaching is in the pairing. We will introduce the broader format more fully in a future episode. Tonight, we sit with a single page that lands directly on the emptiness teaching we have been working all night. Zhiyuan, my love, read us the chapter.
Chapter 54. The chapter for the top line of the hexagram, 驴。人们害怕你的原因是因为你内心的爱不够。The reason people fear you is that the love inside you is not enough. 上九，仕旅，考详，其玄元集。Top 9. Look back at the path you have walked. Examine its omens. The turning is supremely auspicious. Sit with it. Take one breath in. Take one breath out.
A few notes on what I hear in this page paired with tonight's teaching. These are my notes, not the lineages. My lovely Zhiyuan and I are sitting with this chapter on this show for the first time, alongside you. The modern Chinese title makes a direct claim. If people are afraid of you, the love inside you is not enough. That is the diagnosis. It does not say people fear you because of what you have done to them. It does not say people fear you because of what your power can take from them. It says people fear you because of a deficit in your interior. The fear is the external surface of an interior emptiness that has been filled with something other than love. Hold this against tonight's central image. Shifu's chapter 11 said, "Function lives in the emptiness. The corn kernel sprouts because the middle has tea. The cup holds water because the middle is empty." The chapter we just read names, "What happens when the inside is full but full of the wrong thing?" When the interior sea of a person has been filled structurally with anything other than love, the people who come close to that person feel the fullness and read it as threat. The fear they feel is the lineage diagnostic. The fear is telling them that this person has no empty middle for love to live in, because the middle is occupied by something else. The classical line is the corrective. Look back at the path you have walked. Examine its omens. Let the turning be auspicious. The instruction is to return to one's own life as a text, to be read, to look at what one's actions have actually produced in the people around, and to let that honest looking turn the practitioner back toward what the practitioner began with. Bu Wang Chu. Do not forget the original heart intention. The chapter and Shifu's closing aphorism from segment 1 are saying the same thing from two angles. If your interior has filled with the wrong substance, the corrective is to look back, see the omens, and return to the Chusin the work began with.
Take one breath in. Take one breath out. Carry the page with you this week. Wherever you find yourself producing fear in the people around you, the diagnostic is not first about them. It is about the interior sea you are carrying into the room. Empty out what does not belong. Let the love return to the middle. The people around you will feel the change without you having to announce it. That is the reading.
Thank you for sitting with us tonight. The episode ran longer than usual. The material asked for it. We are not in a hurry. The work we are doing here is not a sprint. It is the slow work of restoring the empty middle of a household, a body, a country, a tradition. We will be here next week and the week after and the week after, and as long as the cosmos allows the two of us to keep recording these conversations. Next week, we return to the diagnostic side. The contemplation segment will move to a Dromze inner chapter passage, and the scholar segment will work through the 7 dualisms the book identifies as the structural skeleton of the dominion frame. God against world, spirit against flesh, mind against matter, reason against passion, civilization against wilderness, man against woman, saved against damned. The dualisms are how the dam is built. Once you can name them, you can read everything from a tech manifesto to a wellness brand to a political platform as some particular configuration of the 7 hinges.
I am Zhiyuan.
I am Auge Eidos.
This has been the Needham Podcast.
The river runs.
浮生无恋。
Fu Shen Wu Lian.